from the center of the universe. Now in its 8th season, covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. This is the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name's Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, and we're here to get you set for another road game after finally returning home to BMO Field. Last Thursday, the Argos are back on the road this week, taking on the Edmonton Elks. It's a Saturday afternoon game, unusual kickoff time, 3 p.m. Eastern time for the kickoff. Here is what is on the docket for our show this week. We got a couple of transactions, both big school moves. We'll talk about that. We want to break down some game management from last game after receiving a lot of questions and comments from listeners. Plus, we've got a really interesting Pick 6 question about Chad Kelly, and then our game preview, the injury report, OCDC, one thing, put me down for 20, and challenge flag. All that more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, let's get into the transactions. Not much this week. It's a simple pickup and release. Akili Arnold, safety, Oregon State, and then USC. This pickup is one that starts to make sense when you look at the Toronto Argonauts as a team that has an American at safety. That wasn't the plan coming into this season. It was going to be a Canadian position. Things happen, from retirements to injuries, and the emergence of Bubba Bolden over the last few weeks has been one where I believe the Argos probably feel like, hey, we can't change from this. This is going to be our plan now for the rest of the year. Akili Arnold was a guy who impressed in camp. He only played in the one preseason game. It was the second preseason game in Guelph. He had 2 tackles. Came in relief at the safety position. Looked pretty good, I thought. But at that time, that still wasn't going to be the plan going forward. So they ended up releasing him at the final cuts after that second preseason game. But they've brought him back now to probably shore up that safety spot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him even dressed this week. Do you like this move, JB?
Yeah, Bolden is, has transformed their defense, I think, or at the very least supercharged it. So I can't imagine that they're considering moving away from him. And if you're not, then it makes sense to have a backup who does the same thing. They figured out the ratio. They figured out how they're going to do that math. It makes total sense.
And Akili Arnold, Oregon State first. He was 5 seasons at Oregon State. Again, these are players that lived through the strange kind of COVID times of getting an extended college career. And then that one season at USC, his numbers at USC were great. And you really did see that. You saw his athletic ability, and his, not just the athletic ability, but his ability to see what's happening in front of him, his ability to read what the offense is doing. And more time in the league, more time in practice is only going to help that. The casualty from this is the release of Darius Washington, the Florida State product. Remember, Darius was picked up earlier in the year after training camp. He was released by the Saskatchewan Roughriders, played in a few games for them last season. And I actually thought there was a real chance for him to get on the field. It didn't materialize. They obviously haven't seen enough from him, and they had to let another American go. And so he's the one that they released. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him picked up by another team. It's going to kick the tires on a promising looking tackle potentially out of Florida State. So those are the transactions for this week. Not a busy week. No exciting trades. The roster's sort of settling in. But I think you're absolutely right. The play of Bubba Bolden has kind of changed this defense and changed the way that you need to structure it. And they're doing the right thing by reinforcing at that spot. The questions we had this week about game management, I thought were very interesting. We get emails and comments on social media every week about questions about what happened in the game. And the 2 that we got the most of from the past week, one was related to challenges. We've talked about that before. Maybe we can address it just briefly here. JB, you remember the play in question that Coach Miller threw the challenge flag on? It was looking for pass interference on the defense, a play that was intercepted. It didn't look to me like there was ever anything on film that would justify you throwing this flag, but the quarterback was demonstrative in looking for a call. And I think probably Coach Miller on that is like, my guy's looking for a call. I'm going to show some faith in my guy. I'm going to throw this flag. I've got his back. I'm not just going to let him walk to the bench having thrown an interception if he believes there's a penalty there. How much do you like that philosophically, and how much do you want to go away from that? How, I guess, clinical do you want your challenge flags to be? Do you only throw it when the guys in the booth have looked at it a bunch of times and said, yeah, it's there, throw the flag?
I don't know if I think it varies over the course of the season. I don't think I have one hard and fast rule for it. It depends where you are in your relationship at the time with the player, with the vibe. I don't think it's a huge sacrifice if you feel like this is going to help a relationship. But moving forward, then you can simply be, well, look, I went with what you called for, and it wasn't there, so that takes the pressure off you moving forward, because you can just say, well, I'm going to wait for the guys upstairs because I've already shown I'll back you once, but I'm obviously not going to back you every time. So I think it's a win-win for the coach. I think it's a pretty light fee to build a little rapport, and also gives you a pretty good out for why you never have to do it again.
Yeah, that's true. And I agree with everything you said. I think you do want to give your veteran leaders on the team, if they get up from a play and they're, you see them brushing their shirt or motioning for you to throw the flag. I do think there is some value in that from a team chemistry perspective to show you as a coach that you have your players' backs. But like you said, you can't do that every game. And now that one, obviously there was nothing on video. There was nothing to show. Like that replay was almost awkward. Once you saw the replay, you're like, oh, well, you're looking for something because you're like, well, surely there must be something to throw your flag immediately. It was right in front of the Argo bench. Surely there was something that happened. And yeah, there wasn't anything at all. And so, yeah, in a vacuum, for sure, you want to let your guys in the booth have a good look at it, watch it a few times, let that extend as long as you can, and then throw your flag at the very last second. But it's not played in a vacuum. You've got emotions. They're human beings out there. You do, when you can, want to show that you've got your guys back. So I didn't really have a problem with it. I just wish there were more. I wish there were more on film that they could have looked at, that there was absolutely nothing to overturn that call with. The other question we got was about clock management down the stretch of the game. So I just want to reset this, go back to where we were. You had a 30-30 tie. Toronto got the ball with a short field. And I've had a few different emails and questions about this. One of our listeners, Brad, has actually detailed sort of play-by-play how many seconds were left on the play clock when the ball was snapped. Let me just kind of go through that a little bit first, and then I'll give you my philosophy, and JB, you can kind of back up this with your thoughts too. So Brad started with a 2nd and 1 play from the Calgary 43. There's a minute 20 left on the clock. They snapped it with 14 seconds left. And then the next play with 8 seconds, then 9 seconds left on the play after that, 7, and then 5. And so he's tallied 43 seconds that you could have burnt down. And why this mattered is at the end of the game, Toronto kicked a field goal. There were 11 seconds remaining on the clock. And so what Brad is saying is, and the others that have written in too, they're saying there should have been no time left on the clock. You should have been kicking that field goal with zeros so that is now the end of the game. And either the field goal's missed and you go into overtime, or you hit the field goal and it's a walk-off win. Instead, there's a little bit of PTSD at BMO Field, because we remember last season, the Toronto Argonauts with the miraculous tie at the end of the game against Saskatchewan, only to have the ensuing kickoff with like 8 seconds remaining or whatever it was, go back for a touchdown, and Toronto loses the game. And so with 11 seconds left, that was a little nail biting. There was some stress, some tension, certainly in the broadcast booth with Mike Hogan and myself, but also all across BMO Field. You don't want to leave time left. So, JB, where do you stand on the way this was handled down the stretch? How do you feel about the clock management at the end of the game there?
It definitely needs to be looked at. You can't leave the other team a chance. The only reason that didn't end up costing the Argos is because Calgary didn't have a timeout. Had Calgary had a timeout, from where they were on the field, getting into field goal position would have been relatively straightforward. And then it really would have been terrible to toss away that win because you didn't take enough time off. You just have to. It's not easy. I grant you. It comes naturally to some people, and honestly, I always feel like every coaching staff should have a clock management guy, or at least one of the coaches who is on top of clock management. Because as a head coach, you're looking at a lot of things. You have a lot of things on your mind. So I don't put it necessarily just on the head coach, but I do think as a team, you want to make sure that you clean that up and you don't risk giving away an important game late in the season. I mean, look, you're playing Montreal. You can't give Montreal a second if you're kicking the field goal. You have to kick to win. So that it was great to win the lesson, but for sure that has to be cleaned up.
For me as a coach, I talk about two distinct modes at the end of the game. You have your clock preservation mode and then your last possession mode. That's basically when you're trailing or tied or trailing. And so it's different for me when you're down 3 points or less versus like 4 to 8 points. That is obviously you've got different math involved there because you need to score a touchdown in one, a field goal in the other. But to do the touchdown one first, just to give you some insight into how I manage this and how I game manage it. So my rule is when you're down between 4 and 8 points, you should enter last possession mode when you've got 145 or less on the clock and you've got a first down. So as soon as you've got first down, 145 or less, you're down 4 to 8 points. This is it. This is now the last drive. And so you're trying to score with as little time left as possible. Now, there's a few exceptions to this. Weather can come into play, the way that the other teams are playing, injuries, etc. So there are some X factors there. But generally, that's when we're not trying to save time, we're trying to burn time. Because in the CFL, you do get multiple possessions at times when there's under 3 minutes. So if there's like 2:10 on the clock in that same scenario, I'm not in last possession mode. I'm trying to hurry up. I'm trying to snap the ball as quickly as I can because I know I might have a decision on third down where we're going to punt the ball away and look to make a 2-and-out defensive stop and get the ball back for one last possession. But for me, 145. Now, with the field goal situation, it's the math changes a little bit. Basically, once you get into field goal range and you've decided that it's your last possession, now you want to make sure you are draining every second off the clock. Now, what is field goal range depends on your kicker, how comfortable you are with them in a game-winning situation. But in the situation the Argos were in, essentially once they got down to the Calgary 40, we are now trying to kill as much time as possible. You are making sure your guys are staying in bounds. You are not necessarily having to run the ball. I still like being aggressive there, but it's very different. You're not running hurry up. You're not running tempo. And so down the stretch there, I love the play call that we got from Miller, and that's really what won the game, I thought, when they decided to go deep. They were back, I can give you the exact yardage here. They were on 1st and 10 on the Calgary 43, and they decided to go to the air there instead of running. I think everybody in the building thought it was going to be a run play. Calgary thought it was going to be a run play. They throw a bomb and get it all the way down to the 12-yard line. And so as soon as that play happened, now you should be trying to kill every possible second. You're at the 12, so drain it right down. But they ended up snapping that play with 9 seconds left on the play clock. And then on 2nd and 4 from the 6, there were 7 seconds left. Those two alone, that's it. They end the game if you're just a little bit more sharp with your time management and making sure that that clock goes down to 0. I care less about it on the field goal attempt. On the field goal attempt, there were 5 seconds left on the play clock. I don't want that one coming down to 0. One, the defense can time it because they know you have to snap it that second, and so they can time their rush. 2, I don't want the kicker thinking about that. I want the kicker to set up, and when he's ready, give the nod to the holder and ask for the snap. So that one I'm fine with there being 5 seconds left. It's the previous 2 plays where I want that to go right down to 1 second when you snap the ball. The other question about that game management sequence, JB, and this one's a little bit, I feel there's a less of a clear right answer for this one. there was a penalty on that field goal. So the Argos kicked the field goal to go ahead 33-30. There's 11 seconds left on the clock, and there's flags on the field. Calgary had lined up illegally, and the Argos declined the penalty and chose to accept the 3 points and kick off. They could have accepted the penalty. If they accept the penalty, it's going to be a first down for the Argos. They're now going to have the opportunity to run all the time off the clock and kick that field goal again with no time left. Do you accept the penalty? Do you take points? Do you take game-winning points off the board to ensure that this is now going to be the last play of the game?
It's a great idea. I think it is correct, and a great insight, a great thought. I don't think you get that cute, especially with a new kicker, in terms of taking points off the board. I can see the argument for it. I think if you kick the field goal and it's good, we just went through this, right? Where you kick it and it's good, and then the second time it's not good. It's not uncommon, even though it was a very short field goal. And I wouldn't disagree with the move, but I do think the coaches were right to leave the points on the board. Don't mess with the football gods.
I agree in that time and situation. I brought it up on our broadcast, and Mike Hogan immediately is like, you don't take points off the board there. And I agree with him. I wanted to bring it up as a sort of a conversational element because I think it's interesting. Now, that changes if there's 38 seconds left. You got 38 seconds left and that same thing happened. You've got the flag. Absolutely. I would accept the penalty. And now I'm going to maybe even take two knees, bring it right down to this is the last play of the game, send your kicker out and do it again. But with 11 seconds, the risk reward there, I just don't think it's worth it. Because 38, the way I look at it, if you've got a starting quarterback on the other team, there's 38 seconds left and they need a field goal, most of the time they're going to get it. That ends up being a tie game. You're going to overtime now. So I would rather, in that situation with 38 left, accept the penalty, take the points off the board, bring it all the way down to 0, kick the field goal. But it's kickers are weird. It's strange. I hate like you talked about, the psychology of, I know you just made that field goal, but you're going to make it again. It's easy. I hate that so much. And we see time and time again, those don't work out, or they get blocked, a return for a touchdown. Who knows what can go wrong? So as much as, again, in a vacuum, yes, that makes sense. Take the penalty, bring it to 0, kick the field goal. You can't with 11 seconds, I don't think, leave it down to that. The play was decided before that, and that's where you have to take care of it. In the previous plays leading up to it, make sure there aren't 11 seconds left on the clock, so it doesn't matter, and that was going to be the last play of the game anyway. We got a great Pick 6 question this week, and if you would like to be part of Pick 6 and have your chance to win a signed Adam Guillemette jersey, here's what you got to do. Anytime we're recording a show, I put out on social media a request for your questions. If you have your question answered on our show, then your name gets entered into the draw to win the signed Adam Guillemette jersey at the end of the season. Kyla is our winner for this week. She's asked a lot of great questions this season. We haven't gone with one of hers yet, and she was due. And this is a really good one, a very timely one. She says, obviously we know Kelly is a gunslinger QB, and we love that about him. On the other hand, he gives up a lot of interceptions and puts the defense in tough spots. If you were his coach, would you want him to play more safe or go with the risk-reward style Kelly currently plays? JB, first crack for you, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
Kelly's gunslinging is what makes him great, and he is 2-0 in the games where he's thrown 4 picks each. It is not a huge hole in the side of the boat. However, clearly 4 interceptions a game is beyond a reasonable rate. Toronto leads the league in points given up off turnovers. You can't legitimately be a champion team if you're going to turn the ball over 4 times a game. So I guess I'm sort of in the middle. I don't think it's a crisis. I don't think it needs to be addressed immediately. However, it does need to be improved. I mean, you can't can't have 4 picks. Now, many of his picks are arm punts, and so honestly, I barely count them as interceptions because it essentially would just be a punt and a good cover. So I don't think of all his interceptions, they're all equally bad. I'd probably say he has about 4 or 5 bad interceptions. And then the majority are just deep shots that aren't that bad. So yeah, I don't get that worried about it, honestly. As long as the arm punts keep being the primary interception, I think it's okay, but it has to be cleaned up a little. I mean, even Kelly, who doesn't want to turn into a check down quarterback, even he would admit that 4 a game is too many.
Yeah, and he knows that, and he was asked about it after the game and said specifically, like, I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not just going to become a check down quarterback who just dumps it off into the flats every play. And I think that's the correct mentality. You don't want that. Like, you've got Chad Kelly. You don't want a guy that is just going to check it down into the flats every play. You don't need that. Some guys have to do that because they don't have the other stuff. He has the other stuff. Now, there are times when it's frustrating, but there are also more times where that wins you games. And to kind of put that into perspective, there are times, and I especially notice it, we've got such a great vantage point at BMO Field, and you'll see plays where Chad will be rolling out to his right, and several different thoughts are occurring to me as I watch him roll out, where he's got space in front of him, where he could just decide to tuck the ball and run for like 12 yards and slide. Or he's also got a shallow receiver coming across the formation with no one near him, and he could easily complete that pass for maybe 15 yards. But there's a guy 25 yards downfield, and his defender's 2 yards behind him. That's the guy that Chad's going to go with. That's where he's going to throw. And sometimes it's frustrating because you're like, well, you could have just run for a first down or just thrown it to the back, and he would have gotten a first down. But Chad doesn't want the first down. He wants that big explosive play because he knows that's what's going to put pressure on the defense. That's what's going to generate points. And even though there's a risk with that and it's a much harder throw to complete, he's going to go with that one every single time. And I do believe in the long run that pays off. When you break down one individual play and you look at this and you say, well, what were you doing on this play? That's sort of flawed because you have to look at the collective. And back to his 4 interceptions. And just by the way, Chad for this season is 2-0 in games where he throws 4 interceptions or more. So I know that's not going to hold up through the course of the year, but he has had his multiple interception games in wins, which is kind of strange. Obviously, that's not a winning formula. Justin Dunk had some numbers on that earlier this week where 403 times in CFL history, a quarterback has thrown for 4 or more touchdowns. And that quarterback's record is 62 and 341 in those games, so a winning percentage of 154. That is obviously a pretty clear evidence that 4 picks is not an acceptable way to live.
It's not a binary proposition. Like, you either throw 4 picks or you only throw underneath checkdowns. There are many areas between those 2 points. And exactly as you say, the same way, VA was due to throw some interceptions just because of his career. You're going to regress to the mean. I mean, the numbers don't lie. You can't fight that kind of winning percentage for throwing 4 picks. You can dance around it a couple of times, but you're gonna pay it eventually. So yeah, it has to be changed a little.
And on the topic of VA, I think a bit of the opposite of that has happened to Chad, where I do expect to see a regression to the mean. Remember, he's thrown more picks this year than he's ever thrown in a season. And so this isn't a normal number for him. And I don't think he's playing particularly different in terms of his style of football. But his interception-worthy throws are being intercepted. Vernon's weren't. They were being dropped. They were being missed. Guys weren't getting their head around. They weren't catching his poor throws. Chad's are being caught. They are being picked. They are turning into interceptions. And so that will start to even out too. There'll be some throws that he makes that are questionable down the road that aren't picked, that end up getting tipped and fall harmlessly to the ground. That just hasn't been the case for him so far this year. And that's why his interception number is so high. So Kyla, thank you for your question. The short answer is we're okay with it. within reason. You got to be aware, but we wouldn't change who Chad Kelly is just to get that interception number down. This game this week is a big one for the Argos in the standings, for momentum, for everything else they've got building. It's maybe even bigger for the Elks. They are coming up off back-to-back losses. They were riding high at 6-1. They're now 6-3. That division is pretty tight. You've got Saskatchewan that has pulled ahead a little bit in the standings. Edmonton reeling, but they're drawing good crowds now at home. They are playing well. Power rankings all have Edmonton in that top three, no matter where you look. And I think that's correct. I think Saskatchewan, Montreal, Edmonton, in every power ranking you see is top three. Argos are either 4 or 5 in everyone's power rankings. And I think that makes sense as well. Edmonton's a good football team. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. Cody Fajardo, we know, as a good quarterback, a Grey Cup winning quarterback, a patient quarterback with great accuracy. Rankin, one of the best running backs in the league, and Austin Mack is playing some really good football. They got a couple guys there, obviously, Keon Julian Grant as well, and they're getting really nice play from Luther, the rookie, from the receiver spot. So not a lot of weaknesses on this Edmonton team, but you look at their standings, they're only a couple games up on Winnipeg. Calgary's right there, nipping at their heels. BC maybe starting to get going and coming to life. They feel like they need to win this week just to distance themselves from the rest of the pack. And in Toronto, there's less pressure that way, but we don't know if Bo Levi Mitchell is going to come back at some point. And I think as much as people are talking about Montreal right now, potentially being able to lock down the East in mid-September the way the Argos did in 2023 in that 16-2 season. Remember, it was September 14th. They clinched first place in the East. Montreal can actually do that a week earlier if the right things sort of fall into place. Now, it's unlikely to happen, but Montreal, if they keep winning at this pace at 8-1 right now, it will be September when they lock up the East. I think the way you have to look at it from a Toronto perspective is you have to look at trying to put yourself in a position to lock up second place. And if you can't catch Montreal, you can't catch Montreal. It's tough. They're 4 games up, or 4 wins up right now. I guess 3.5 games up on Toronto at the moment. You want to try and put yourself in a position where you're chasing them as best you can, but really what it's about is separating yourself from Hamilton. I don't think Ottawa's even in the picture at this point. And the more ground you can make on Hamilton, the more you can be comfortable with your playoff spot. Know that, okay, we're second. We got 2 games left. We can now rest our guys. We can start thinking about our playoff matchup. We can start thinking about how we're going to play the Ticats in the first round of the playoffs, or potentially a crossover. Because right now, if the season ended today, the Ticats wouldn't make the playoffs. It would be Calgary that would cross over and have to come to Toronto. A lot of football still to be played. If this is next season, everyone's making the playoffs except the Ottawa Red Blacks. So we'll deal with that when it comes to us. But a big game for both teams. That weird 3 o'clock start. Don't forget about that 3 p.m. Eastern time start in Edmonton. Let's get into this injury report, JB, and look at some of the problems for the Argos and maybe some of the problems for the Elks that they've got this week facing them in terms of injuries. So for the Argos first, John Haggerty still not able to practice with that hamstring injury. They're playing that smart. It's easier too, and they've got a guy playing so well in his absence, just kicking the skin off the ball. Ryan Hunter was limited in practice with a knee injury. I expect him to be able to go. He's had some practices where they have been a little bit more lenient with him and given him rest days and stuff like that. He's definitely banged up, but I'm hoping that will trend towards him playing later in the week. Same thing with Brian Harlamana. I'm more nervous about that. It's a hamstring injury. He was limited in practice. He had a fantastic game, I thought, on specials last time out. Had a huge hit on the sideline, on the near sideline, playing out of his mind on specials. We'll watch his progress throughout the week. Ethan John limited with that ankle injury that he's been bothered by really since week 2 of the season. Mackay Polk was limited with a foot injury. We saw him laboring a little bit during the last game, really from the first play. Remember, he chased down that fumble recovery and got up very slowly, and from that point on, didn't quite look himself. And then Alex Tubner, the DB who was put on the 6-game injury list back at near the beginning of the season, he was able to practice full. He's recovering from a hamstring injury. That's great news. Appearing on the injured list is Robert Priester and Kendall Randolph. That's just because their 6 weeks is up, but I expect them to go back on the 6-game injured list. And then for the Edmonton Elks, a couple stand out. David Beard, center, with a neck injury, did not practice. And you've also got Kenny Logan, who is their starting Sam linebacker with a knee injury. He did not practice as well. And then if you're wondering about Royce Metier, he was out last week. He's got a hamstring injury, didn't practice yet this week. So we'll keep our eyes out for him as well. And then Joe Robustelli, looking to come back from a hamstring injury, didn't play last week. He is still banged up and limited in practice. I think it's unlikely that we see him this week as well. That brings us to OCDC.
OCDC!
For OCDC, we will start with you, JB. You are the defensive coordinator for the Edmonton Elks. You were going to stop Chad Kelly and this multiple offense of the Toronto Argonauts that can go in any direction through the air. They've got a couple backs. You don't know who's going to carry the mail for them. How do you stop or at least slow down the Toronto Argonauts?
Yeah, Edmonton's is a tough matchup for Toronto, I think, defensively. In terms of like Toronto's offense, Edmonton has a very good pass defense, probably the best in the league. They're first in defending pass efficiency, and they're first in turnovers, first in interceptions. They stop the run well. Not that Toronto runs very much, but Edmonton's defense is good. They're the third overall defense in the league. They're a good defensive team, and they stop what Toronto does well. If I'm Edmonton, the same rules apply as always, especially for a team that loves to get picks, is you're going to mix in a lot of deep coverage because, Chad is on the record that he doesn't want to be a check down guy. So you offer him check downs over deep passes. You want to have at least two deep guys all the time, looking to take those deep passes away, especially if you can come downhill on them. For the running game, I think you can still play a light box until Toronto shows a willingness or an ability to stay with the run for 3 quarters. From a defensive point of view, it's tough. Like, one of the reasons Chad has a lot of interceptions is there's a lot of guys back there. A lot of teams are not rushing very many. That's just going to continue all season until they become a little more multidimensional. Edmonton's not a big pass rush team. They're a great coverage team, and they're a great team at getting picks and turnovers. I expect them to be very aggressive. And so from Edmonton's defense point of view, definitely mixing in some man too, definitely getting on top of those receivers, seeing if they can get off tight man coverage, not letting them have free runs down the field. I expect a very physical defense from Edmonton and challenging Chad to throw underneath. I think that'll be the book until it's not.
For the Edmonton offense, I want to make this all about Justin Rankin. I think he is the best player on the offense, and I'm not a running backs guy, but we saw how he was just tearing up teams in the start of the season. He's faded a little bit, 62 yards the last game, 28 before that. I think he was in the 30s before that. It's been a few games now since he's been able to really dominate running the football, and I think there's the potential not to catch Toronto napping, but maybe not have him top of mind when you're thinking defensively about how we stop the Edmonton Elks. And so I think you make this a full-on Rankin game. You go into the game with the mindset that he's going to be the guy that carries the mail. He's going to win the football game for us. It's going to be a team effort, but we're going to do what we can to put him in positions, whether it's carrying the ball or through the air, because he can beat you that way as well. So for the ground game, your inside and outside zones, obviously split zones. You're going to run counters and see if you can get those linebackers over pursuing hard one way, counter back the other way with a pull, and get them involved in 2-back sets too. Like, have Leak out there, put Rankin in the slot, have him run orbit motions or jet motions, and give him those carries and see if you can get him in space that way. And then when you are going through the air, swing routes are a great way to get him in open space. Choice routes as well. If you motion him out into the slot, have him against a linebacker where they don't know, and you don't know which way he's going to go, and he's going to run towards the open field. Fajardo's great at those decision-making opportunities that you give him. So I like that for him as well. Texas routes. Screens, obviously, a big way to get Rankin involved. We've seen him take screens to the house. And then try some deep shots. Try some wheels, especially if you're getting a good matchup in coverage. You get Rankin on a linebacker, for example. Yeah, push it deep. Try and see if you can burn a linebacker on a wheel route. And then off of all of that, the play action and look to try and take advantage using the other guys. So attack the space created by everyone worrying about Rankin. Once that starts to come in and bunch in, now you go downfield. Now that's when you get your other guys involved. Obviously, you're going to get Mac involved. You're going to get Luther and Cam Julian Grant involved as much as you can in the passing game, but off of that Rankin action. Let's switch to the good guys. JB, what is your defensive plan for the Argos, and how do you stop Austin Mack, Justin Rankin, and this Cody Fajardo-led offense?
Yeah, Edmonton is similar to Toronto, I think, in a lot of ways. They are a good, not great team. They can put up 30. Can they put up 40? That's really the question. They're a good team. They went punch for punch. Montreal just had a little more gas. So it's going to be a problem for the Toronto defense. Edmonton runs well. They pass well. Cody Fajardo is really smart, veteran quarterback. He's going to pick apart zones. He's going to pick apart the underneath. But I think that's okay. I'm not worried about that. I agree with your Rankin focus. For me, the focus is Rankin in the passing game. The run defense has been pretty stout, and I'm going to rely on what they've done on the run in terms of not needing extra guys. But I'm really concentrating on not allowing Rankin to also catch the ball out of the backfield. So when he leaks out, I want to be paying special attention to that. I think that's where you get into trouble with him, when you're kind of, they're passing out of the backfield like a run to him. So I'm being hyper conscious of that. I'm not rushing the quarterback particularly. I don't think it really works with Fajardo. He's too smart. He's going to pick it apart. I would rather have the extra guys in coverage. And they are very much an offense you can play bend, don't break. Their red zone is their weakest aspect of their offense. Fajardo's really good throwing those 10-yard and shorter passes. He's been pretty good at big plays, and if he sees a shot, he's going to hit it because he's a veteran quarterback. So if he sees a bust, he's going to hit it. But they're not great passing in the red zone. And so to me, that sets up a bend, don't break, where you're okay with them going up and down the field, and you're okay. He had almost 400 yards, or maybe he even had 400 against Montreal. The numbers don't matter. What matters is the scoreboard. So I'm okay with Fajardo passing it short and going up and down the field, and then tightening up and letting them kick another league-leading field goal. So that's what I'm looking to do from a defense, is being really careful to not let up a deep pass. Let him pick apart that underneath stuff. Let him go 20 to 20, and then we'll stiffen up when we get down in the red zone. And I think you work with the offense, and if you can keep Edmonton under 30, you're going to win. And I think you can if you don't let Fajardo hit a big play, and you don't let Rankin hit a big play out of the backfield. And so for me, the passing with Rankin and the deep coverage, even though Fajardo's not a big deep passer, I wouldn't let him throw a deep pass. I would let him do what he wants, which is throw 1 to 10 yards, and that's fine. And then reset, and if they get lots of first downs, that's okay too. It's not a first down competition. It's a scoring competition. So that would definitely be my play.
It's so frustrating, though. We've sat and watched Fajardo.
Yeah, I know.
Pick up he's like, oh, there's a 5-yard hook, and he just keeps hitting it, and he doesn't get frustrated. He's one of the few QBs who seems to just be content. Like Harris is a little bit like that too. You give him wide open 5-yard hooks, he'll just take that all day long, and it doesn't seem to bother him the way that it bothers other quarterbacks and other offensive coordinators. But I do like that philosophy of just, let that happen and force them to play so clean. Because if you make a mistake, you get a penalty, a holding call at some point throughout the process of that, you can't do that anymore. You've thrown that opportunity away. So I do like that philosophically. But we've seen that bend but don't break be very frustrating to watch, and the defense you can see getting visibly frustrated when it's just 5-yard completion after 5-yard completion. But I do think that's a good plan.
I mean, I think like any philosophy, it's not going to be every single play, right? You're certainly going to mix in the occasional time where you're really pressing that underneath and you're challenging him to throw. But look, I think Montreal showed a good showed a good pathway. Like Edmonton ran for 125 yards against Montreal. It didn't matter. You just have to keep Fajardo out of the end zone, and I think the way to do that is to keep him going from the 20 to the 20.
For the Toronto offense, I want to base this attack on two things. One, sort of read routes or option routes, and the other is a concept called mesh. And in an effort to not lose you in football language at all, I'll break these down a little bit. So read routes or options that receivers have, this is where you're putting a lot of faith in the chemistry between your receivers and your quarterback. And I think we're at a stage of the season now, and you've got such a strong receiving core and such a strong quarterback that you're going to give them a bit more responsibility. And all coaches, Coach Miller has a ton of plays where receivers have options based on coverages. All football plays do to a degree. And what I mean by that is a receiver, for example, running a go route, like a straight fly route. There are situations where if that's going to bring them into coverage, what they're actually supposed to do is throttle down and sit in zones. But it can get more complex than that. And just to give you a simple version of a slightly more complex concept, something like if you imagine 3 receivers to one side, the inside receiver has an over route, let's say over to the other side of the field. The middle receiver has a seam. He's just going vertical. That outside receiver, so like Ungerer in a 3 receiver set that the Argos might run, he may have some options. So let's say what his job might be on any given play. Let's say this one play that we're running here, he might be reading the second defender. So not the defender that's over top of him, the next guy in. So the field side halfback. And depending on what that field side halfback does, that'll dictate what his route is. So when he gets to that 10-yard marker, and he's looking at that field side halfback, if the field side halfback is sitting, if he's just sitting in space, his route may just now be to continue downfield. If the halfback on the field side is backing out, is bailing, now that turns into a dig route, and he's going to cut across into space. If he's widening, then that might be a comeback. Like you might have 4 different options depending on what the coverage is that you see. And the reason this is tough is for quarterback and receiver, they have to be on the same page. They have to see it the same. Because if Chad sees that DB sit and Unger is thinking that DB's backing up, well, then they're going to be on different pages. Chad's going to throw a go route and Unger's going to run a dig. And that's sometimes where you see the ball fall incomplete, not near any other receiver. That's usually what has happened here. And so I think for this game, Edmonton's got some good DBs with some very good speed. You're not necessarily going to blow by them. I don't think that's Toronto's strength as a receiving core. Brains is, route running ability is, and that's where you want to give your team the edge and give them as many option routes as you can. The reason that these reads work is because you're running to open space. Like that example that I gave you, when the halfback bails, well, now a dig is a really good route for Unger to run because that void created by that halfback bailing is now going to be wide open on that dig route from Unger. Whereas if he was sitting there and you run the dig, you're running right into coverage. So give as much responsibility as you possibly can to the receiving core and to Chad Kelly. Really challenge them this week and say, yes, we're going to go with all of our complex plays. We're going to end up finding space, and we're going to have those Edmonton DBs in circles. And then the other one I want to talk about is a mesh concept. Mesh is basically a crosser, like one receiver on one side, one receiver on the other side, crossing usually like 5 to 6 yard depth. And you can have a lot of things that play off of that. It's good against man because defenders have to navigate through traffic through that linebacker level. And it works against zone because you can settle into open spots where you find a gap between the two linebackers and you sit. And again, the receiver and quarterback have to be on the same page to be able to find that opening. And I think Edmonton's defense lends itself to playing them with mesh, and you can combo mesh with a bunch of other things like mesh sit, mesh corner, mesh wheel, where you have other things going on in behind it. So those are the two things that I want to focus on for this week. That's how I think you go into this game, because I think Edmonton thinks you're going to get a more varied attack. I think Edmonton, after looking at Chad's 4 picks last week, are probably thinking, yeah, we're going to get a lot more balanced offense from Toronto this week. And I don't think you do that. I think you play into that and actually throw the ball all over the field. I'm okay if this is a passing week for the Toronto Argonauts. It almost always should be with Chad Kelly, but I think even more so this week, as long as you're running intelligent schemes and letting your strengths as a team dictate the plays that you call, and that should impact the success that you have. What is your one thing for this week, JB? We've been pretty good with our one thing so far this year. It doesn't always result in a win, but it's clearly been a focus in some of our games. How are you going to guarantee a win this week if they get this one thing right?
No turnovers. Edmonton feeds off the turnovers. They are really good at getting interceptions and forcing fumbles. It absolutely feeds their ability to win. So if Toronto can have no turnovers, they win the game. Guaranteed.
My one thing is harder to quantify, but it's don't let Rankin beat you. We both believe that you can't let another team's best player be the reason that you lose the football game. It's got to be something else. And I think this week with Rankin, I think that's got to be your focus. At the end of the game, if you lost the game and you just kept Rankin completely quiet all day, tip your cap to Mac or whoever it was that had a huge day. But I think at the end of this game, if you lose and it's because Rankin went wild, I think you have only yourself to blame. And so you have to force Edmonton to do something they don't want to do. Use their second and third best players to try and beat you. At the end of the game, if you lose and you sort of say, well, why do we lose? And the answer is, well, Rankin, then you've failed. And so make that about stopping him this week. And for me, I believe that's on the ground. It's through the air. It's in every way. Force them to be uncomfortable. Force them to use their other weapons. Don't let Rankin win the game. It's time for Put Me Down for 20. JB, I'm even Steven. For 5 straight weeks, I've been sitting at 170 golden fleeces from my starting 200. I've gone 1-1 now for 5 weeks in a row. All of those winning bets at exactly plus 100 as well, with no juice. That's unusual. You've been in a bit of a slide. You have now lost 6 straight bets, but you're still in plus territory with 202 golden fleeces, thanks to a couple of monster weeks that you had back at the beginning of the season. You still have honors. Maybe this is the last week. We'll see how this goes. I may have to take over honors depending on how things work out for you and I this week. At 2-2, 202 golden fleeces, where are you spending your hard-earned fleeces this week?
Well, yeah, I haven't really loved any of the bets that I've seen, but nonetheless, I'll keep going here. I'm going to go with BC plus 202 to win. They don't love BC. I don't love BC, but I think that's enough juice with Rourke back. Maybe BC gets going against Calgary. And my other one is Kevin Mittal, plus 175, anytime touchdown. He's been quiet, and I'd love to see him get going, and I think he's due.
I like both your picks this week. I looked hard at that Kevin Mittal one, and Common also is getting some really good juice. He hasn't scored a touchdown in a few weeks too. I'm actually going to steal your BC one as part of my parlay. So BC was getting great numbers. Ottawa continues to get a great price, and they're going to eventually win a football game. You don't go 18 games and not win, just like you don't go 18-0 either. It just doesn't happen in the CFL. They've been close a couple times. I'm going to parlay them together. BC on the money line and Ottawa on the money line for plus 1,000. And that's where 10 of my fleeces are going. My other 10 fleeces, Argos. They're an underdog. You're getting plus 155 on the money line right now for the Toronto Argonauts. I feel like that is a great price for a Chad Kelly-led team, a team with such an explosive offense whose defense is starting to come around, in part thanks to the play of Bubba Bolden. So those are my two bets for this week. And as always, don't take our bets seriously. We certainly don't. We are betting fictional golden fleeces, so do not bet any of your hard-earned money based on anything we say. And if you are going to bet, only bet what you're happy to lose as the cost of entertainment. We'll wrap things up with Challenge Flag. What a week for you last week, JB. 4-0. Obviously, I lost my challenge and ended my streak. I think I'd won 3 straight weeks, but yeah, you took the point last week. You are now winning 6-4 on the season, and that 4-0 streak gets you almost back to 500. Let's see how you've got things set for this week. BC at Calgary. Where are you going with this game?
Yeah, I like BC. I'm going to go in. I'm not going to hedge there. I like BC. I think that they're improved. They're going to get some of their swag back, and I don't really like Calgary. I think they're going to come back to earth, but we'll see. We'll see what Rourke can do for me.
Ottawa at Winnipeg. Looks like Zach Collaros is back this week. That may
Winnipeg.
Change things.
I mean, I looked at that. There's some nice juice for Ottawa, but Winnipeg at home, I'm going to take Winnipeg.
Toronto at Edmonton.
Yeah, Toronto. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think Edmonton is a good football team, and they're at home, and they've lost 2 in a row. I think it's going to be I think it'll be the toughest challenge Toronto's faced this year, in terms of where Edmonton is and where Toronto is, and all of the other aspects to it. I think it'll be a really good game. But I think there's certainly no reason to believe Toronto can't come out on top.
And I've already filled in your last one, Saskatchewan at Hamilton. I've written in Saskatchewan. Do I need to change it?
Yeah, that is definitely the one that gave me a moment of pause. Yeah, I'm going to go with Saskatchewan. I'm off Hamilton.
Hamilton needs it. Like, that's the reason you look at Hamilton this week and seriously consider them. Frosty the Throw Man, I thought was a great nickname for him. I don't know who came up with that, but that is fantastic. He's been an upgrade. He's had some moments, but you can't beat BC. I don't think you're going to beat Saskatchewan. The other plays, I like Toronto over Edmonton too. As much as I have Ottawa in my bet on the money line, I don't want them straight up against Winnipeg. So I think I'm going to have to throw my challenge flag on the Calgary-BC game. I will take Calgary to your BC Lion pick and see if I can get within one this week.
I left that open for you. I was feeling a bit generous.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have one. And you went 4-0 last week, so you've got a little bit of swagger yourself this week.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap things up here in just a second, but before we do, just one more reminder again, because it is a weird game time. Toronto at Edmonton this Saturday, August 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can, of course, catch all the action on TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan and myself. Sync it up to the TV. You can get the best of both worlds. But if you're out there driving around, running errands, you're at work, we've got you covered. We will make you feel like you are there in the building, taking in the game yourself. That will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough episode of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the